For his involvement in the looming government shutdown, MAGA billionaire and de facto president-elect Elon Musk was brutally, but appropriately, humiliated on the Fox propaganda network by liberal commentator Jessica Tarlov, who fact-checked his lies about government funding and, more importantly, roasting him for the removal of $200 million into pediatric cancer research. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got one long clip to take a look at here, about 2 minutes. Jessica Tarlov, who is the sanest voice at the Fox Propaganda Network, by the way, and that club of people, of like sane voices at Fox, it's shrinking because Neil Cavuto, I think yesterday, officially left abruptly Fox News, and he was one of the few remaining like journalists actually at the network. So Jessica Tarlov is single-handedly keeping this institution's credibility up. She also, by the way, co-hosts a podcast with Scott Galloway called Raging Moderates. You should definitely check it out if you haven't already. She has the hardest job in legacy media, and I think she should be rewarded with our support. Now, with that in mind, she's on the 5, right? She's outnumbered 4-1 by MAGA cultists, who of course support Elon Musk. And Jessica makes a really compelling case for, Musk's stupidity, his incompetence, and the cruelty which has come from his meddling in government funding, particularly when it comes to pediatric cancer research. So we're going to play this clip, and then we'll unpack it together.
What you voted for.
And maybe in the end, Jessica, Democrats might be just glad that this came to a resolution so that they can go home and just like catch their breath and come back with a better, attitude in the new year.
I'm not sure about that, and I'm not sure how smooth this is going to be from here. There are a number of members of the Freedom Caucus who have said that they're not going to vote for this because what were deficit hawks when Joe Biden is in office have woken up and said no problem with a 2-year suspension of the debt ceiling. Chip Roy, who's been a staunch supporter of President Trump, a principled conservative, now Trump's going after him. Mike Pence is defending him. So those are where the lines are drawn on the sand. Who should we hang? Who should we not hang on January 6th? He's saying.
I should also say, just real quick, since she discusses the debt ceiling, number one, this was before the doomed vote of the Musk-Trump-backed partisan government funding bill. That happened later on. It failed. 38 Republicans voted against it. It was a public humiliation for Donald Trump and his boss, Elon Musk. But I also want to acknowledge great points by Jessica with regards to the debt ceiling. I have been advocating publicly in my own small way that I think that President Biden and the Democrats should not agree to raise the debt ceiling. That's not something that's due until June of 2025. Every time Democrats are in charge, Republicans viciously oppose it. They use it as a leverage tool to try to extract concessions from Democrats. But when Republicans are in charge, Republicans enthusiastically want to raise or suspend the debt ceiling and demand that Democrats go along with it. And in order to save the country from domestic and international economic catastrophe, Democrats usually go along with it, no matter who is in charge. It's Republicans who are profoundly hypocritical on this. And so I think that Democrats should not reward the GOP's bad faith by permitting Donald Trump or voting for Donald Trump's debt ceiling to be raised before he goes into office. He's going to have a trifecta. If he wants the debt ceiling raised, he can do it with his trifecta once he becomes president or negotiate with Democrats to make it happen. But we should not do it on Biden's watch. So we'll continue.
What are you doing going after someone like Chip Roy, who's saying, where are the spending cuts? And the American public, to your point, they voted for a streamlining that involved spending cuts, which weren't in this bill. They weren't in the bill before, and they're not in this as well. Also, you say the people wanted this. The richest man in the world wanted this. Elon Musk did, and programs that came out of it. What's your problem with a bipartisan cancer research program for $190 million? A drop in the bucket of what this is. Those are the kinds of things that came out of this. And the reason that people are saying that Trump is the unelected president, not only because of the hundreds of millions of dollars that he paid to get Donald Trump elected, is that Donald Trump wasn't kicking up a fuss about the bill before Elon Musk got a bee in his bonnet. He wasn't saying anything. And then Musk gets mad and floats things about bioweapons labs and the stadium, the DC stadium thing, which he got completely wrong. And suddenly this is happening. So I don't want anyone to have a day without their paycheck, let alone during the holidays. And Donald Trump suffered through this. Remember when he closed the government for 35 days over the holidays, and his public perception tanked a little bit at that moment. And obviously we don't want that. But Democrats, why should we help out with this?
Again, Democrats shouldn't help out with this. Great points by Jessica all the way around. And we're going to unpack a lot of this, like the lies that Elon Musk told about bioweapons and a football stadium. We'll get into that. But also, obviously, the biggest point of all, which is that as a consequence of Musk's meddling, $200 million was stripped bipartisanly or rather, I'm sorry, it was partisanly stripped from bipartisan $200 million into pediatric cancer research. Chris Hayes goes into this a bit more. Chris Hayes, one of the best analysts left on MSNBC, particularly in the aftermath of Mehdi Hasan's departure from it. So we're going to play this 60 seconds, and then again, we'll get into all of what Jessica and Chris had to say.
They cut nearly $200 million in funding for, ready for this, childhood cancer research called the Gabriella Miller Kids First Pediatric Research Program. That's what they cut. That program was established on a bipartisan basis under President Obama. Former Republican leader Eric Cantor was one of the driving forces behind it. Republicans tore the funding for that program out of the bill, seemingly at random, because Elon Musk told them to. So I want to be clear about what's happened, what's transpired in the last 24 hours, okay? The richest man in the world, worth $250 billion, took $190 million away from kids with cancer. That's not hyperbole. It's not exaggeration. That is what has happened.
It is what's happened. And as a consequence, this is trending. So if you look at Elon Musk cancer, people are commenting on this. Elizabeth Warren, we know now what it looks when Elon Musk calls for government efficiency. For starters, cuts to funding for child cancer research. I wish I were making it up. You have Victor Shi, Democratic activist Sawyer Hackett discussing this. Thanks to Elon Musk and Donald Trump, Republicans cut $190 million for pediatric cancer research from the funding bill. Congrats to Doge on their first victory. Jon Favreau, host of Pod Save America, former Obama speechwriter, says, congrats to Elon Musk for giving the people what they want, less funding for child cancer research. Bill Madden, I mean, the list goes on. And Brian Tyler Cohen, friend of the show, just so we're clear what happened, Republicans tore apart their funding agreement with Democrats after Elon Musk told them to. They created a new bill that defunded child cancer research. And then they failed to pass that bill, too. So it was humiliation on top of humiliation. Not only to own the libs did they defund bipartisan pediatric cancer research, but then they actually failed to do it. It's like all those times that Donald Trump, to own the libs, wanted to strip away the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, just to stick it to President Obama. And I suppose you could make the argument that this is precisely what that is, too. As Chris Hayes pointed out, this was a bipartisan initiative that began under the Obama administration. So perhaps this is another attempt by Elon Musk and his servant, Donald Trump, to stick it to President Obama. But just like Trump tried to when he did the ACA, to own the libs, but millions of Americans, strip healthcare away from millions of Americans. And then he tried it again during COVID in 2020, tried to get his right-wing Supreme Court to outlaw, to render the ACA unconstitutional. This is what they do. They hate the libs. They hate Democrats, blue cities, blue states, women, minorities, marginalized groups, the media. They hate half this country so damn much that they are willing to defund bipartisan pediatric cancer research just to own the libs. Super gross. The Bulwark goes into more detail. This is from, I think, I almost said Josh Stein, who is the governor-elect of North Carolina, a Democrat, thank God. Anyway, this is Sam Stein from The Bulwark. The decision by Republican leadership to scuttle a bipartisan funding deal Thursday night has left lawmakers scrambling and others anxiously bracing for a government shutdown. For a host of issue advocates, however, the prevailing mood in D.C. was one not of chaos, but utter devastation. The initial deal the congressional leaders had agreed to included a number of key priorities that in the course of hours were jettisoned by GOP leaders looking to calm Elon Musk's peak and satisfy Donald Trump's demands. And though the slimmed-down bill that Trump endorsed in its place failed to pass the House, few people expected the initial deal would make a comeback, meaning that many of its components were likely gone for good. The list of provisions left in the dust heap was lengthy. Let's get this. But some of the hardest cuts to swallow involved medical research. In particular, advocates say the revised funding bill that delivered a devastating blow to the fight against pediatric cancer. The slimmed-down version was stripped of language that would have allowed children with relapsed cancer to undergo treatments with a combination of cancer drugs and therapies. Currently, the FDA is only authorized to direct pediatric cancer trials of single drugs. The bill also didn't include an extension of a program that gave financial lifelines in the form of vouchers to small pharmaceutical companies working on rare pediatric diseases. It was also missing earlier provisions that would have allowed kids on Medicaid or CHIP, that is, poor children, to access medically complex care across state lines. For political veterans, however, the most striking absence in the revised bill was language that would have extended funding for the Gabriella Miller Kids First research program. The program, named after a 10-year-old Virginia girl who died from an inoperable tumor in 2013, was something of a miracle to begin with. When it passed in 2014, the Obama administration and congressional Republicans had been at a standstill over federal spending. Sequestration cuts had taken a big bite of the budget for the National Institutes of Health. The $126 million that the bill authorized over a 10-year period to help fund pediatric cancer research was minor compared to the $155 billion that the NIH lost in appropriations. But it was also the product of painstaking negotiations with then House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, expending significant political capital to ensure the law got passed. And by the way, just as a sidebar, even that's gross. It shouldn't take significant political capital for Republicans to pass or to agree to pass research into pediatric cancer research. Can't we all set partisanship aside to fund pediatric cancer research? No, probably not, because you still got to own the libs. And by the way, the own the libs mentality, as bad as it is now, it was also present during President Obama's administrations as well. When it did, it resembled a rare moment of serenity in an increasingly bitter and divided Capitol. Gabriella Miller's family, who started the Smashing Walnuts Foundation, attended the signing ceremony. Quote, "It was a turning point in pediatric cancer research, and I've never been prouder of the entire Congress for rallying behind it," recalled Rory Cooper, a former Cantor aide. But the funding needed to be extended, and the bill that the current crop of congressional leaders agreed to earlier this week did just that, devoting an estimated $190 million to the program through 2033. The presumption among the compromise bill's authors and advocates was that it would sail through. Representative Jennifer Wexton and Senator Tim Kaine, both from the Miller's family home state of Virginia, put out a press release applauding the inclusion in the continuing resolution. The Facebook page for the Smashing Walnuts Foundation put up a post declaring that Gabriella Miller Kids First 2.0 had passed and would be signed into law. It was signed by Gabriella's mother, Ellen Miller. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. That was December 17th. By December 19th, the provision had been axed from the bill after Musk went on an X rampage, tweeting that the bill was a Christmas tree that was antithetical to conservative small government ambitions and threatening to primary lawmakers who supported it. There we are. Quote, "We spent a lot of time putting together policies with broad bipartisan support to help kids seriously ill," said Nancy Goodman, founder and director of Kids vs. Cancer. How can it be that our society is not thinking about the most vulnerable children and doing everything they can to help them? How can we cut this out in the name of efficiency? How does that make sense? Direct consequence of Elon Musk's meddling. I have a lot of people in my life who really like Elon Musk. I used to like Elon Musk years and years ago. I have liked him considerably less with each passing year. Whatever his success, and clearly he's successful, whatever his talents as an entrepreneur or an engineer or a visionary, I won't even dispute that. I understand some people probably go too far and say he's not talented at all. That clearly can't be the case. Others probably overstate his brilliance, whatever. For the sake of argument, I will not dispute Elon Musk's genius in the private sector. This man doesn't know what the fuck he's doing when it comes to politics. He is a moron, objectively. He's stupid. And worse than stupid, which is bad enough, he's very, 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 very powerful and stupid when it comes to politics. And as a consequence, $200 million bipartisanly assigned for pediatric children's cancer research has been stripped from necessary government funding. Now, he might say, well, I didn't mean for that. Then that means shut the fuck up and get out of this. Get out of the way. Nobody elected you. You don't even have a formal position within the federal government. It's not like you're an appointed chief of staff, for example. You're just a very wealthy, powerful person meddling in things that are not your area of expertise. You're stupid. You're out of your depth. Shut up. Get out of the way. That's what a responsible person should do. So either he did it maliciously, in which case he should be criticized, or he didn't mean to do it, in which case he should have the humility to say, sorry guys, I kind of screwed this up. I'm just going to I will still give my opinion since it's my First Amendment right, but I won't lobby and whip votes against necessary government funding. I won't threaten primaries against people who get in the way, or rather who support $200 million for children's pediatric cancer research. Tamp it down a bit. I doubt we're going to see that level of humility from Elon Musk, a man who is so egotistical that he is rivaled only, in my opinion, by Donald Trump himself. So, Politico, getting all the way back to Jessica Tarlov, setting the pediatric cancer research aside. Jesus, look at these three. Jeez. Politico has an article, What Elon Got Wrong About the CR. Okay? It goes, a fact check if you must, pun intended. Musk spent Wednesday stirring Republicans into a frenzy over the stopgap spending bill filed by Johnson. His day-long flurry of dozens of postings on X appear to have succeeded. But among the 100-plus tweets Musk sent Wednesday were a number of misleading or outright false claims, a worrying start to the mogul's new role as co-leader of a Trump-led effort to slash government funding. Government shutdowns aren't painless. Musk is repeatedly posting that government shutdowns would not have a significant consequence to the country. While this one's a half-truth, yes, essential government functions and personnel are allowed to continue during a shutdown, but there are significant real-world effects. Other government employees will halt their day-to-day work and miss paychecks. While Social Security checks will go out and mail will be delivered, agency shutdowns cause massive lost productivity. A 5-week shutdown from 2018 to 2019 caused the economy to lose about $3 billion. What about government efficiency? What about productivity? And by the way, that 2018-2019 shutdown, that was the fault of Donald J. Trump, the former and future president of the United States. So, wow, it seems like he's a beacon of inefficiency. Member pay won't be raised 40%. Both Musk and the X account for his Department of Government Efficiency got the facts surrounding lawmaker paychecks wrong. It's not a 40% increase. The maximum potential pay adjustments would be 3.8%, an increase of about $6,600. Basically a cost of living increase of 3.8%, not 40%. Taxpayers are not paying for a new stadium. Musk reposted a claim that the bill would provide $3 billion for a new NFL stadium in Washington. Not true. The bill simply transfers control of the site of the existing RFK Stadium to the D.C. local government for redevelopment, which could potentially include a stadium. No federal funds are changing hands as part of this transaction. The bill isn't shielding the January 6th committee. Musk said it was outrageous that the bill would block House Republicans from investigating the January 6th Select Committee established in the prior Democratic majority Congress. Not exactly. This section of the bill cited by a convicted January 6th rioter that Musk quoted has nothing to do with internal House investigations. No bioweapons lab here. This is what Jessica Tarlov also referenced. Musk reposted a screenshot from the conservative account Libs of TikTok claiming that legislation would fund bioweapon labs. That's false. The provision in question would establish regional biocontainment laboratories as part of a larger pandemic preparedness plan. Their stated purpose, quote, conducting biomedical research to support public health and medical preparedness, not creating bioweapons. The provision is part of a long-sought reauthorization of the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness and Response Act. He doesn't know what he's doing, or he does, in which case he's a malicious liar. Two forks in the road, or one fork in the road with two paths. He's either an idiot who should shut up, or he's a liar who should shut up. But he was already powerful and influential as the richest man in the world, but since he endorsed Donald Trump for the presidency, he has mutated Twitter into a right-wing cesspool. Studies have shown this, that since Musk openly endorsed Donald Trump, there has been a massive boost of engagement for right-wing accounts that some researchers believe has to be artificial, that he is juicing the algorithm to choke left-wing content and advantage right-wing content. They see no other meaningfully or no other reasonable explanation as to why that would be the pivot point and why we would see such a stark asymmetry starting from that point. He donated $250 million or contributed $250 million to electing Donald Trump. He has threatened to use his enormous wealth to fund primary challengers to people who oppose Donald Trump's agenda, even on principle, if they're in the Republican Party, and to fund primary challengers against Democrats in blue district. And his net worth has nearly doubled since Donald Trump won the election. That is staggering. All of that makes him unusually powerful, particularly for somebody who's not an elected official. And now, given the close proximity between Trump and Elon Musk, that power has meaningfully increased. Elon Musk may be the most powerful man in the world with no checks, only the ability to cut them. Very dangerous. And for somebody so dishonest and so politically stupid to wield that kind of power, it's really dangerous. And if you doubt that, look at this. $200 million stripped from pediatric cancer research, all to own the libs. So if you're an Elon Musk fan, food for thought. Maybe we admire what he's done in engineering, but have contempt for what he does politically. Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.